2 months ago, panel, we talked about whether ICE would be able to work with local law enforcement. Should they help the Customs Enforcement Agency? And Madison County, the sheriff there, just signed an agreement with ICE to do that. Todd Hood says the deputies will be trained to serve as civil warrants and court orders for non-citizens who have criminal or pending criminal charges. But the sheriff says those who aren't involved in crime are low on the radar list. And yet some farmers and farm workers are concerned because 41% of the property is farmland. And Tara, I'm wondering what concerns you about this new policy for Madison County?
Well, the first concern is that to me, Sheriff Hood was a little, I'm going to use the word flippant, in just simply saying, well, if you haven't committed a crime, you know, you're not on the radar, et cetera, when we know that ICE has certainly gathered up people who haven't committed crimes or who might have been in jail for, you know, too many parking tickets or something like that. We know that that has happened. So that was my first concern. The second concern is that here you have a sheriff agreeing to this a memorandum of agreement with the federal government, when you also have the state's attorney general having strongly recommended that no local sheriff, no local government agree to these contracts with the federal government. So it's sort of like the chief enforcement officer of the state is in disagreement with local sheriffs and other legal advisors. So that's the second thing. And the third thing is that, okay, and this is a little unclear, if you read the memorandum of agreement and some of the things that Sheriff Hood has said, it seems like the person would be about to be out of custody when then this warrant would be served so that the person can then be transferred to ICE. So if the person hasn't done anything so that they should be let go, you know, released from custody, then in essence, you're then putting them in a different sort of danger when they haven't really done anything. So it's a little confusing.
Let's turn to our law enforcement expert here. Ben, what do you think about this policy?
I love it. I love that it's in the way it's set out. It's warrant service officers that have been deputized, trained, and it is people that are in custody for criminal purposes. What is the disadvantage of not doing it there is in the public. So what Sheriff Hood has decided and what he has signed on July 2nd is good because they're not going out on the streets and collecting people. They're not doing ICE's job. What they are doing is limiting the amount of interactions out on the street, kicking doors in, scooping people up off the street or in the fields while they're working. And that's the way it should be done. If you have a warrant out for your arrest, and it can be served while you're in jail versus you are let out and then good luck, try to hide from ICE. I think that's dangerous for everybody involved.
Depends what we're talking about in regards to a crime though, right? Isn't it a crime to be in this country illegally? So does that apply to all undocumented people? That's not entirely clear. And I would agree with you in terms of people being charged with a felony in this county. I think the county would have an interest to notify ICE and have those people detained. But is this the most efficient way to do it? Any of us can call ICE. They have a tip line that you can report suspicious activity. They have the toll-free number. So any local law enforcement agency can contact ICE and say, hey, I've got somebody that I think is undocumented. And ICE can very quickly issue a detainer, and that enables local law enforcement to hold them for 48 hours. So why have the county pay to train these people to do things that can already be done without the county having to pay for it? That's the part I don't get.
Sarah, what's your view?
Well, I mean, part of my concern is the fact that it's not the whole process isn't very democratic. These sheriffs can enter these agreements, these 287 agreements with the federal government, and there's almost like no oversight, right? So even in the case of Madison County, the Board of Supervisors didn't even have to agree that they should do this. And so it's not the people don't seem to necessarily want it. They understand that some of the implications that you're talking about, that it might sweep up needed agricultural workers, they might sweep up innocent people, as has happened before with people who are just there because they, have a faulty visa but have been members of these communities for 20, 30 years. And the public actually doesn't really like these these actions on the part of these local law enforcement. And so there's so little accountability, and that's so true of sheriffs in general. They wield a lot of power, and they are elected, but they are really, there's hardly any competitive elections in terms of sheriffs. They tend to skew very conservative, more conservative than the residents in the communities that they serve. And they often go very unaccountable, and so I think that that's a problem.
Tara, Sarah says that the people like this, and I think most people would agree that persons who are being charged with felonies should be detained. But then, as Luke says, it goes down from there. But this is a Republican county who voted overwhelmingly for Trump. So Madison County people, I suspect, are supporting this program.
Well, I think we need to separate two things. They may be supportive of the idea that illegal immigrants who have committed a crime should, certainly be arrested, go through the appropriate legal procedures, and then be deported if that's appropriate. But the problem here is that as I understand it, the arrest may not have, the initial arrest by the sheriff's office may not have anything to do with your being an illegal immigrant. You may be there for other reasons, and then you can then be detained by ICE. So that's the first problem. The second problem seems to be that did the people of Madison County support the idea of immigration reform versus did they support this plan for immigration reform?
Right. Ben, ICE just got something like, what do I have here, $19 billion a year for immigration. So do they really need sheriffs' extra help here?
They don't need it for financial reasons, but it is, again, making it safer for everybody that's involved. Back to several points that were made is, yes, it's illegal to be here illegally, but I've arrested people for what appears to be like, just drinking and driving, which is bad. But then when you get them to the jail, you find out that they have warrants for rape, murder, and other things. So there's sometimes a delay that you find out that although the initial arrest misdemeanor is not all that person's wanted for. And, Luke is saying that, like felonies, this is a crime and you'd be okay with it being a felony, that we're checking this. Why? Why does it matter what they're being arrested for? If they're there and they have a warrant out for their arrest, although, from the federal government, I just don't understand the reasoning behind, well, this is reckless driving, DWI, and hit and run. So none of that is a felony. We're not going to check.
Well, I'd like to challenge this idea, something you said, which is it makes the community safer, or you suggested that. I don't think that's true. I think if you have local law enforcement going around potentially arresting you for some immigration violation when you haven't really committed a crime except for those violations, that it actually makes people less likely to call 911, to involve local law enforcement, to report crimes. So I think it actually has the opposite effect, is it actually has a chilling effect on people helping out local law enforcement. So I'm not sure it makes communities safer.
Sarah's point is absolutely correct, and it must have been misunderstood. When they're already in jail, that's the safest place versus scooping up people, pulling them over only because they might be wanted by ICE.
Okay, we are going to have to leave it there, but we will be watching how this pans out.